You get a text 20 minutes before pickup. It says, "We need to talk about what happened last weekend." No context, no detail, just that. And immediately your mind starts moving. What did they mean? Are they canceling? Is something wrong with the kids? And the bandi. By the time you arrive at the exchange, you have already rehearsed the conversation. You are already defending something you have not even been accused of yet. You are in the drama before it officially started. That is not random. There is a recognizable pattern behind moments like this, and once you understand the mechanism, it becomes much harder to get pulled in. Most people assume that conflict happens because of something real, a missed pickup, an unpaid expense, a scheduling disagreement. But that is not always what starts it. Sometimes conflict starts with nothing more than timing and tone. A message sent at the wrong moment, worded in just the right way to trigger a reaction. The actual content almost does not matter. What matters is what the message made you do. It made you respond quickly. It made you explain yourself. It put you in a position where you felt the need to justify your choices before anyone even asked. That pull, that urgency you felt in your chest, is where the pattern lives. And here is what most people misunderstand about it. It does not require deliberate intent to work. It just requires a predictable response. Psychologists call this reactivity. It is the tendency to respond to emotional signals automatically before conscious reasoning has a chance to catch up. When communication feels urgent or slightly threatening, the nervous system treats it as a signal that something needs to be resolved right now. That sense of urgency is the entry point. Think about what happens in that gap between receiving a vague or loaded message and deciding how to respond. Your brain is already scanning for threat. It is pulling up past conversations, past conflicts, past outcomes. It is trying to figure out what this person wants and how to manage it. All of that happens before you have typed a single word. And that internal scramble is exactly the state in which people make their worst communication decisions. They over-explain. They apologize for things they did not do. They ask clarifying questions that open 3 more conversations. Or they get defensive, which signals that the message landed, which reinforces the pattern. There is also a concept called intermittent reinforcement. It describes what happens when unpredictable interactions keep you in a state of low-level anticipation. You never quite know what is coming next, so you stay alert. You monitor messages more closely. You respond faster than you normally would. That hypervigilance is exhausting, and it creates a communication dynamic that is very hard to exit once you are inside it. The pattern does not need to be calculated to be effective. It just needs a willing participant. And most co-parents, because they are genuinely trying to keep things civil, end up being exactly that. That response feels like keeping the peace, but it is actually confirming that the pattern works. Here is what pattern recognition actually gives you: not a way to win, a way to stay outside. The first principle is this: engagement is not the same as resolution. Responding to every message, every implication, every vague accusation does not move you closer to peace. It keeps the loop running. The instinct to clarify, to correct, to defend feels productive. It feels like you are trying to fix something. But in a reactive communication pattern, that instinct is what keeps the cycle alive. Consider a specific scenario. A co-parent sends a message on a Sunday evening asking why the child came home without their backpack. Simple question on the surface, but it arrives at 9 p.m. with no follow-up, no explanation, just the question. The regulated parent responds with an explanation, then an apology, then an offer to bring the backpack the next morning. 3 messages sent in response to 1. The following week, the same kind of message arrives, this time about a snack sent in the wrong container. Then a message about pickup timing. then about something the child said on the phone. Each message arrives at a high-stress moment in the day. Each is worded just ambiguously enough to seem to require a response, and each time the same sequence plays out. Question, scramble, over-explain, apologize. This is not a series of unrelated problems. This is a communication pattern, and the person it is wearing down is the one doing all the explaining. There is another version of this worth recognizing. A co-parent sends a message 3 days before a holiday asking to discuss the schedule. No specifics, just that. You respond, asking what they had in mind. They reply hours later with a new request that was never part of the original agreement. Now you are in a negotiation you did not agree to enter over terms that were already settled on a timeline designed to create pressure. The urgency, the vagueness, and the timing worked together. Not one of those elements alone would have pulled you in. All three together made it feel unavoidable. There's one response in that moment that actually makes the cycle worse, and we'll come back to it shortly. Here is where most people misunderstand the pattern. They assume the goal of these interactions is to get a specific outcome, a schedule change, an apology, a concession. But that is often not what the pattern is really after. The goal, whether conscious or not, is engagement, continued contact, continued reaction. Which means the most disruptive thing you can do is not to argue better. It is to reduce your engagement to the minimum that the situation actually requires. And here is the response that makes the cycle worse. A long, detailed explanation. Because it signals that the message reached you, that it worked, and that this approach is worth trying again. The second principle applies here. Respond to the content, not the subtext. If the message says the child needs new shoes, respond to the shoe situation, not to the timing, not to the tone, not to the implication that you somehow failed to notice, just the shoes. What you choose not to respond to is often more powerful than what you say. The first behavior shift is to create a response delay. Not because you are being uncooperative, but because reactive responses are almost always less strategic than considered ones. When you receive a message that triggers even mild discomfort, give yourself a window before responding. 30 minutes, an hour. Enough time for the initial emotional charge to settle. That delay alone will change the quality of your responses significantly. You will notice that many messages that felt urgent at 9 p.m. look very different at 7 a.m. The second shift is to develop a response filter. Before you send anything, ask 3 questions. Is this response necessary? Is it clear? Does it move the co-parenting situation forward? If the answer to all 3 is yes, send it. If not, revise. Many responses that feel necessary are actually responses to tone, not content, and tone does not require a response. The third shift is to document without narrating. If a communication pattern is affecting your ability to co-parent effectively, keep a simple record: date, time, message content, and your response. Do not analyze it in the moment. Do not add commentary. Just record it. Over time, a clear picture forms that is far more useful than anything you could communicate in a single reply. The fourth shift is to identify your personal entry points. Everyone has specific triggers that make them more likely to engage reactively. For some, it is messages about the children's well-being. For others, it is anything that questions their competence as a parent. Knowing your entry points means you can slow down precisely when it matters most, because pattern recognition is not only about noticing what the other person is doing, it is about recognizing what you tend to do in response. The third principle is this: clarity protects you. When communication is vague, it invites interpretation, and interpretation is where reactivity enters. One of the most effective things you can do is move every substantive conversation toward written, specific communication, not because it is adversarial, but because specificity removes the ambiguity that keeps these cycles running. If the co-parenting agreement covers the situation, reference it. If a request falls outside the agreement, acknowledge that and take time to consider it. "I will review the agreement and follow up" is a complete response to most requests. It is not dismissive, it is structured, and structure consistently applied changes the dynamic over time. There is one more layer worth understanding: patterns shift. As you become less reactive, the communication pattern will often adjust. New pressure points will be tested. New approaches will emerge. This is not a reason to become guarded. It is simply useful information. When you notice a new approach being used to draw you back in, that recognition itself is enough. You do not need to name it out loud. You do not need to react to it. You just need to apply the same principles. Delay, filter, document. Stay focused on the actual content. Over time, the pattern loses its grip. Not because the other person changes, but because you stop being a predictable participant in it. That is the real shift. Not changing the co-parent, changing your role in the dynamic. And that is entirely within your control. If you recognized something in this video, notice which part stayed with you. Was it the timing of messages? The urgency built from vague language? The impulse to over-explain before anyone even asked? That recognition is the starting point. Pattern recognition does not make you cold, it makes you steady. You stop responding to the weather and start responding to the facts. And that shift protects your peace and the children watching how you move through this. If this video helped you see something differently, consider the next video that's on the top left of your screen. Alternatively, the playlist in the bottom left has more tools for steady, structured co-parenting communication. If you are not subscribed yet, the button on the right keeps you connected. Take your time. You are doing the work that matters.